it is no secret out there that fish with its omega-3 fatty acids can boost your heart health. Well, now there's a new study suggesting that fish oil supplements, when given to your baby, may help prevent obesity and insulin resistance in your child as they grow up. This was a study done in Australia. It looked at 420 infants. Half received fish oil from a 650 milliliter pill. The rest were given a placebo containing olive oil. And the infants who took the oil, the omega-3 oil, for the first 6 months of their lives, when those kids were 5 years of age, researchers took blood samples, measured waist circumference, and those children who took the fish oil actually had smaller waists than those that had placebo. And I think it's really important, first of all, to note that this was not a study done for vanity's sake. We're not talking about, oh, okay, your waist is smaller in circumference, so these kids look better. This is all about getting back to the visceral belly fat. I was intrigued by this study. I'm always shocked about doing studies on babies. I'm not personally very comfortable with the whole concept of testing things on babies, but that's why we're joined now by pediatrician on Skype, Dr. Eric Ball, to talk about this. So, Dr. Ball, give us some insights and your thoughts on this study.
So it's an interesting study. This would be kind of the holy grail, right? So if you can give something to a baby that therefore prevents them from having heart disease when they're older, that would be really the most ideal way to treat heart disease. So it's really interesting that they gave certain children fish oil, and then those children had smaller waist circumference. And we know that smaller waist circumference in adults leads to fewer heart attacks and cardiovascular incidents. So the question is, does having a smaller waist size at age 5 lead you to have lower heart attack risk when you're older? That's a little bit unclear. And there's some issues with this study, and I don't think it's going to change how I practice right now, but it's certainly interesting looking at it in the future.
I think it also highlights fish oil supplements. You can read one study that say that fish oil supplements are the best thing since sliced bread, and then you'll read competing studies that show the results aren't quite as favorable. When I talk about omega-3 fatty acids for heart health, I'm talking about the real thing and getting it from the foods you eat. And that's where I think, Dr. Ball, this is also interesting, because this wasn't a study where you looked at kids and giving them more foods that were high in omega-3 fatty acids. They were truly giving these kids a supplement. I am curious your thoughts on that, because again, there's always been a lot of controversy out there, and as a pediatrician, I'm sure this puts you in a difficult spot if a parent now comes in and says, well, Dr. Ball, why wouldn't I put my kid on fish oil supplements?
Right. We're very, very reluctant to put kids on supplements for all ages, but especially little babies. These things aren't well regulated. They're not tested for safety or efficacy in babies or children for that matter. So I'm very, very reluctant to put a 2-month-old on a fish oil supplement.
And I think it also highlights one other concept that I've really thought through in my career, and certainly the last decade hosting the doctors, is you have food as your medicine, you have food as your poison. And when you look at foods that are high in these helpful fatty acids, and it's not just fish, when you look at nuts and foods like that, what don't they have in them? Sugar. And we don't have time to get into this right now, but sugar addiction in kids is rampant. And so when you replace the sugar with foods that are higher in these helpful substances like these omega-3 fatty acids, you're going to see positive changes. And Dr. Ball, at some point, we'll delve into that. Unfortunately, we're out of time today. Takeaway for you with parents is just talk to the pediatrician, but let's get some more studies done before we start giving kids these supplements. Is that fair to say?
Right. It's really interesting. I look forward to seeing what happens in the future with long-term studies with this. But as of right now, it's not something that I would do for my own children or recommend to my patients.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ball.
Thank you.
And pediatricians have a really tough job. Yeah. Because they're balancing more than maybe any other patient population. You're balancing the do no harm that we take that oath, because you do not want your baby to be a guinea pig.
And that goes back to the point, how do we glean information? How do we learn? Well, you have to do studies, and doing studies on kids is such a,
it's a thorny area.
Yeah.
But I will say this, if better studies are done and this proves itself to be true, that's encouraging.
Give me one of those.
Here you go, buddy.